Hello, Tabernacle family. Thanks for joining us for the midweek message this week. We're still in the Psalms. We'll be going through a good variety of Psalms here for the next few weeks. However, these next 2 weeks, namely next Wednesday and the following, July 7th, I will not be posting midweek messages. I'm taking my family on the great Midwest tour, so we're seeing the in-laws and the outlaws and all that kind of good stuff. And so I'll be back with you on that third Wednesday, posting again. So I would heartily encourage you, and there's a good group of you that very faithfully follow these midweek messages. Thank you so much. I'd heartily encourage you to come out on Wednesday night, 6:30 to 8 o'clock, for our midweek message, which will be there at the prayer meeting. And so that hour and a half, we actually do a little bit more than just pray. There's also a message that accompanies it and such like that. So consider doing that if you would. That being said, we're in Psalm 3 today. And as I'm studying through the Psalms, I'm learning a great many things myself. That's wonderful. I had never known, for instance, that Psalms 1 and 2 were actually the introduction to the Psalms, or that they went together with that inclusio. So I'm learning along with you guys. And as I'm studying Psalm 3, I've come to realize that this was a psalm sung in the morning. This is traditional usage, ancient usage. And that Psalm 4 would be the psalm sung in the evening. So we're catching a morning and an evening psalm, Psalm 3, Psalm 4. So you can look forward to that evening psalm there on that third week from now. But the morning psalm today. It's actually a very heavy psalm. You can read the inscription right there at the top, the superscription, I guess we should call it. It says the Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. Just a brief word about that. We're going to hit these superscripts time and again as we go through this. I don't believe these are part of the inspired word. These are editorial comment. However, I think that they are written by wise editors and are trustworthy. Same kind of how we do like chapter and verse. They're not inspired, the big number 4 or the little number 3, but they are very helpful. Same with the superscripts. They're, I think, historically reliable. In fact, when you look at the New Testament figures, whether it's Jesus or whether it's some of the apostles quoted in Acts and such, they take these superscriptions at face value. And so I think we should follow their lead and do the same. At the very least, these were written a whole lot closer to the actual writing of the psalm than we are. These, in some cases, 3,000 years later. That's a lot of history. So this superscription tells us that it's David who wrote this. And the timing of this is very tragic. I came out here in 2011, there in the summer. And back home in Detroit, Farmington Hills, Dearborn kind of area. Well, Dearborn at the time. Now this family lives in Farmington Hills. There's a family called the Cipriano family. And most tragically, there in April of 2012, Tucker, the son, with his friend Mitchell Young, decided that they would break in to a house. They had rehearsed this, but no one was home. And then the night came. They broke into the house, and Tucker proceeded to beat to death his own father and grievously wound his mother and his brother Sal. 2 other siblings were hiding in a closet and went undetected. What a horrible situation. We have a name for it. It's called patricide. When a son rises up against his own father. The horrors are scarcely imaginable. And that's the setting of this psalm. That is what David was experiencing when Absalom, his son, rose up against him. You could actually find different portions of this psalm, I think, referring back to different accounts in this situation in which David flees. Let me kind of remind you of 2 Samuel just for a little bit. 2 Samuel reads like a glorious tribute to the great king, up till chapter 11, at which point the wheels fall off. This is David's sin against Bathsheba. It's his sin against Uriah the Hittite. He lies. He covers up. Uriah dies, but it seems to indicate that more than just Uriah died in battle because of David's scheming. all manner of bad things happen. You get to chapter 12, David repents, praise God, but you can't undo the choices you've made. And so part of the consequence of that is that this drama never departs from David's house. Chapters 13 and 14, Amnon had a friend, remember that, whose name was, and you have this sin of one half brother against Tamar, half sister. Tamar is related to Absalom, and so now Absalom really enters the story. Tamar and Absalom are full brother and sister, and Absalom wants to avenge his sister's honor. And the way that that's handled by David is not well. Absalom now begins to vie against David's authority. And really starting from chapter 15, doesn't resolve all the way until chapter 19, this saga opens up in which the son lays claim to the throne, and it nearly costs David his life as he flees in the night, as thousands rally around Absalom and rise up against him, as his head is bowed down in shame. And yet, in the end of it, the teeth of this usurper are broken, and Absalom dies. And so you come to chapter 19, and while David is in grief over the loss of his son, the victory is the Lord's, and the Lord's anointed is on the throne. That's all the history behind this. I want you to think of it this way, though. This is a psalm of lament. And like I said earlier, historically, this was sung in the morning. And so as you rise up, it's so common that all of the troubles of the day surround you. And maybe your anxiety flares up, or your depression brings you down, and you think, oh, what do I have before me this day? I would encourage you to start praying Psalm 3, singing Psalm 3, and may the Lord bless you. I'm going to kind of give this to you in 3 parts, and then the 4th part being a result. And it sort of follows the biblical selahs as you go through here. Here's the first, verse 1. Or in the Masoretic text, verse 2. They would take the superscript and make that verse 1. Nonetheless. Yahweh, O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising up against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. Selah. This is Hebrew poetry. It's synonymous parallelism. So the first 3 lines essentially repeat themselves. Look at all the people that are arrayed against me. I mean, do you ever feel like that? Where you feel like you're trying to do what's right and the obstacles just continue to come. I want you to also think of David as a prophet and some of the ways that these things are referential even to Jesus Christ. How many people rose up against Jesus Christ? What was it like when Jesus was there hanging on the cross and he heard these words? He saved others. Can he save himself? Or don't write that inscription over his head. This king of the Jews. Write it this way. He said he was the king of the Jews. He trusted in God. Let God deliver him if God takes delight in him. You remember all these things said about Jesus, the anointed. And even as we were reminded in Psalm 2 that God will minister through his anointed, Psalm 3 is also pointing to the anointed, to the very Son of God. But I think we can relate to David right here in that we have these problems in life. So these first couple of verses are a reminder that God understands your problems. And sometimes you hear these just grievous things in which people really throw it back in our face. You trust in God, and God allows you to go through this. Very recently, God in his providence allowed me to come upon someone who was in very dire straits and had actually been in a horrible situation even that morning. And as we were talking, one of the things that this person had on the mind was, what's wrong with me that I'm going through all of this? I mean, does God hate me? What is wrong? It's the same verbiage right here in the psalm. We live in a broken world, and it may not be that anything is, quote unquote, wrong with you. Namely, that there are just many things in life that are very difficult in this broken and sin-cursed world. And people may not understand all of the complexity of this world. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. When that kind of verbiage is thrown at you, who do you believe? Do you believe God? Or do you believe these very loud opponents mocking you? You know, this type of psalm has a real military connotation to it. Well, of course, when Absalom rose up, that was a military action, wasn't it? And so you'll see this phrase. In an ancient warfare, this is a common thing where one nation would rise up against another and they would taunt their God. Like, your God cannot save you. That's what's going on right here. We go from problem to prayer. And so in a psalm of lament, I love lament because it sort of takes the reality of where you are and your good theology about God, and it forms a bridge between those two. So having forthrightly talked about the problems, this is the situation, now let's pray. Turn your soul to God. Maybe you can do this. Maybe as you look to God today, you say, God, these are the problems that are around me. Pray. But you, Yahweh, you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory, and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. And again, if you trace David's flight from the city, he's actually going up the Mount of Olives at this point. Boy, is that referential to Jesus Christ or not? Like, don't you just see the prophetic and the type and antitype and all of this stuff, even as Jesus, is weeping, in the Garden of Gethsemane. But here's David, and as he goes up, his head is bowed in shame, and people are hurling insults at him. And so much so that Joab is like, you want me to kill this man? And David says, look, maybe God even sent him as the words of a prophet to insult me. I deserve it right now. I cried to the Lord, but God answered me. We don't have figments of the imagination here. We don't have this pray to the universe type of thing. We don't have this bow to the icon or the image or the fetish type of thing. We have the one true living God, not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. Would you pray to him? I prayed to him, and he heard. As he prays, and as you pray in the Psalm of Lament, tell yourself the truth about God. You've just truthfully talked about your situation, right? Look at all these people around me. Will you tell the whole truth? And also talk about your God. Who is this God that you pray to? He is a shield. Do you believe that? That he will protect you. He is my glory. That's a terribly deep verse right there. That God is your glory. The problem is, so many times as we're looking at our situation, we think that we are our glory, and if my image is distraught, then I am undone. That's not true. If God is your glory, what can man do unto me? Read Romans 8. He who didn't spare his own son, but delivered him up also for you, how will he not much more freely with him give you all things? God is your glory. If God's glory is your sustaining good, then you'll make it through this. You're my glory, my shield. You are the lifter of my head. Head high, shoulders back, come what may. Problem, prayer, next one, peace. Problem, prayer, here comes the next one. Peace. I lay down and slept. Don't you love that right there? Sometimes when you start thinking about all the hardship of life, insomnia is the natural result, but it's not necessarily the godly result. I lay down and slept. Think of Peter in prison. The angel has to kick him. He has to hit him. Hey, wake up. Wouldn't that be a welcome change from those sleepless nights? And remember this literally. David is fleeing for his life. And if you actually trace that through, when you get to chapters 16 and 17, that first night, David doesn't sleep much. He gets a word, and so he and his people wake up and they cross over the river there and throughout the night, so that by daybreak, all of them had crossed over and they're saved. So as David is writing this, looking back on this event, he's saying, you know what? But tonight is different. Tonight, I will sleep. I will lay down and sleep. And I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. I have to go back to an ancient commentary at this point. This is St. Augustine. And he takes this as also symbolic of Jesus Christ. That as you see this psalm pointing to Jesus Christ, Christ, just like David, as he was across the river and as he was on the mount and as he was, participating in all these things, he also slept. In this case, referencing his death, burial, and resurrection. I laid down and slept. I was on the cross, I died, and I rose again. And so this is, again, type and antitype pointing to Jesus Christ. For Yahweh sustained me. In other words, the Lord did not allow his Holy One to suffer decay. Maybe you'll quote that other psalm in coordination with this. The Lord sustained me. Verse 6, I will not be afraid of many thousands of peoples who have set themselves against me all around. Boy, amen to this. And similarly, for you, this is the peace that passes all understanding. Notice it has not yet said that the situation is resolved. That's coming. That's the last couple of verses here talk about the result. But that's not yet. Right now, what we are experiencing is the direct result of the peace that comes from prayer. Absalom's still chasing David, and yet David is able to say, peace, shalom, because his mind is stayed on thee. Great peace have those, right? Or think Psalm 46, verse 10, that you are able to be still and know who is God, that he is God. Even as Jesus says, peace be still, and the wind and waves obey, invite him to say such words to your soul. Many have said to my soul, God won't deliver him. But what does Jesus say to your soul? This night, this morning. This is a psalm for the morning. And so as you wake up, Lord, grant peace to my soul. And he will. He who did not allow death to overcome Jesus, what will he do for you? I will not be afraid of people. Is that true of you? So much of our fear actually is almost like this gaze that we have on evil. And as we gaze upon it, it seems to grow in size, in stature, with almost hypnotic power. Break the gaze, break the spell, turn away from the problem to the solution, Jesus Christ. I will not be afraid of people. What can man do unto me? Don't fear the one who can kill the body. Fear him who can destroy both body and soul in hell. And understand that that one is for you. And if God is for you, right, who can be against you? I will not be afraid. Verses 7 and 8. Exsurge Domine. Arise, O Lord. I love this. You'll see this time and again in the Psalms. But I want you to remember this from the book of Numbers. And the problem is, we call it the book of Numbers. And so when you read it, you think it's like this thing that accountants drool over. Like, I just can't wait to crunch the numbers. And yes, there are a couple of countings there, and that's why we give it that name, from the Latin Vulgate. But that's really, it doesn't do a good service to the contents of the book. And so when you read the book of Numbers, you should probably title it in your mind, Wanderings or Wilderness, or better yet, Camping with God. How cool is that, right? So go camping with God. And when you are doing that, in fact, for a church called Tabernacle, that should be our book right there, Numbers, right? The book of the Tabernacle. In Numbers chapter 10, verse 35, Moses said this. So now here David is quoting Moses, that anytime the people would set forth, Moses would pray, arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered before you. And then they would set forth. Told you, this is a militaristic psalm. And so they went. And if the Ammonites were there, peril to the sons of Ammon. And if the Edomites were there, peril to the sons of Edom. And if the Moabites were there, who can stand before the Lord, right? Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered before you. I told you, this is a great psalm for the morning. And so as you arise, pray this prayer of Moses, arise, O Lord, this prayer of David, arise, O Lord, make it your prayer as well. God knows how to protect his own. And then Numbers 10:36, and when they returned, he would say, return, O Lord, to the thousands of Israel. and the glory would return. Yahweh, the covenant-keeping God. Arise, O Lord. Save me, O my God. And so now here's the actual contents of the prayer. This is the result of all these things, the problem, the prayer, the peace. Here's the real result. For you, save me, O my God, for you strike all my enemies on the cheek. This is an insult, that you would give them this grave insult, that you would take their pride and debase it, show them for who they are, and that you would shatter the teeth, break the teeth of the wicked. When's the last time you heard this in one of your praise songs? I was kind of laughing about this morning, right? We stand and lift up our hands. What if we just sang like, oh, break their teeth, oh God? By the way, that's a good prayer. Like, it's right in the Psalms. Feel free to pray that. Maybe we'll sing that song next Sunday. But the idea is not so much one of personal retribution and personal vindictiveness. That's not it. But one of actual militaristic deliverance. That God, save your people. Think of the 10 plagues. That's a breaking of the teeth. That the savage beast has been rendered harmless. Furthermore, that the taunts of these people are silenced. And so now, with a mouth full of broken teeth, they are speechless, harmless, speechless. And so all these words, those people who are taunting, oh, where is your God? Let God save him. They are silenced in the face of the activity of the living God. Salvation, verse 8, belongs to the Lord. What a great psalm pointing to Jesus Christ, the one before whom every knee will bow. Psalm points to Philippians 2. Your blessing be on your people. Selah. And I should point, we're going to hit Selah a whole lot of times throughout the psalm. We're not entirely sure what Selah means, but our best guess would therefore be it's this musical interlude, has this idea of a pause. It literally can be translated rise up, or maybe the music crescendos, gets a little bit louder. The idea being something like this. Think about it. What we've just read, it sort of marks a paragraph. This is of great importance. Think about it. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessings be upon your people. And may God bless you this day.